there, fellow marketers. Professor Wolters here, and today we're in New Orleans, Louisiana, and today we're going to talk about is the STP process: segmentation, targeting, and positioning. Because for marketers, we really need to know this. We need to know is how we're going to divide up our market, who are we going to target when we divide it up, and how are we going to position ourselves for the most attractive for that segment, okay? And the first thing we need to do, the first step, is what we call strategy or objectives, okay? What is it we want to do? If you think about it, overall, when we're segmenting things out, we have to figure out is why am I segmenting them? Is it in order to see, do I segment who would want to go on a trip to New Orleans and who wouldn't want to go to a trip on New Orleans? Or do I segment in terms of, oh, I want to talk to business students versus entrepreneurs versus non-business students? These kind of things, you have to think about your objective. Why am I really going to segment these things up? Because if I'm segmenting, because my goal is to increase sales, I want to segment who isn't buying, who is buying, those people who are buying, why are they buying, those people who aren't buying, why aren't they buying? Could I focus on them differently? These kind of things, all right? So what's important in this first step, we really have to analyze the firms. What are we doing well? This is when that SWOT analysis will come in. What are we doing right? And so is there something we're doing right that we can keep doing more right to even target more people like that, right? Get some more of that market penetration in there, right? Keep getting that things. Or do we see where there's some weaknesses where we're kind of messing up? So McDonald's, they're doing great in terms of location and standardization and their brand, but they have an issue in terms of being perceived as not health conscious. So maybe our objective is how does McDonald's change its perception? What we need to figure out is who perceives McDonald's as unhealthy versus healthy and go from there, right? Or think of a tourist destination like New Orleans. When people think of New Orleans, they think Mardi Gras and party time and all kinds of great stuff. But did you know New Orleans has tons of great stuff to see that isn't related to beads and Bourbon Street? Oh, the zoo that's here, the aquarium, going to the cemeteries and checking that out, the tours, swamp tours, see alligators. There's all kinds of great family things as well, and people don't realize that. So they might have an objective is how do we break up our market so we can eventually improve the family-friendly image of New Orleans? Because let's be honest, when do you see news of New Orleans? You see it at Mardi Gras. You see them, oh, look at the party times and all kinds of stuff going on, yay! And they don't show the fantastic, fun family things they do here. So you kind of think about those things, all right? And so when we start doing that, we start coming up with our objectives we want to do, that makes it easier for us to move into our next step, and that is our segmentation methods. How are we going to divide up our market? Now, we have a video that goes into about 15 different segmentation models that help you understand how you can break things down, because you're going to use multiple segmentation models to really, break things down. Because it's not just male, female, it might be income and all these demographic things you might think about. You might break it down in terms of situation. Oh, it's a family vacation situation people versus a guy's trip situation people versus a conference situation. All these kind of things, you might break it down that way. So you have to think about these different methods you might use in order to segment up your market. Because in this segmentation method, what we're basically trying to do is figure out some descriptions. We're developing the descriptions that really get people to fit in these boxes and these segments so we know how we're going to target them, okay? And we can focus on a lot of different things like I said before. Now, once we've kind of divided up on all these different segments, then we have to evaluate segment attractiveness. Step 3, decide which one is the most sexy, which one is the least sexy. Basically looking at the ones we can make the most money from, the least money from, all these kind of things that we're going to be kind of going through those, okay? To kind of decide, is it worth it for us to focus on that group? And the thing is, people I think make this mistake when they segment, they're only segmented on who's gonna buy our products. You also want to segment on who's not going to buy your products. So maybe you make sure you don't advertise to them. Or maybe you find out like they're not buying from us. What can we do so they could buy from us? That's one of the things you got to kind of think about. Okay, we got to evaluate all these different segments. And we have actually a video that goes through all these evaluation parts. I think it's in Paris, actually, which is a nice thing, or Scotland. It's one of those fun ones when I was traveling around the world for that one. But you have like, can you identify the market? Is it a big enough size? Is it a substantial size of the market? Can you actually reach them, the reachable side of things? Are they responsive? Does that market like do what you want them to do? Will they buy your products? Will they come to New Orleans for their family trip? This kind of stuff. And then you look at the profitable side of that segment. Will we make money on it? Because if we're not going to lose money. We got to think about these things. And after you've kind of evaluated all these segments, now, boom, we're going for them. And that's step 4, selecting a target market. And you might select it. This is the first market we're going to go for, the second market, the third market. You have that. It's kind of like if you travel around the world and there's a movie coming out you want to see, sometimes it opens first in the US, and in the UK, then in Germany 2 weeks later. Like, why is that? Well, they have different markets they're going to target at different times. So you have to think about those things. So we're evaluating each one of those and we're selecting who we're going to go for first, okay? Because really we're selecting who we're going to go for, but also we're selecting who we're not going to go for, okay, at this time. And so once we've selected our target marketing, then we have to develop our positioning strategy. We have to develop ourselves to make sure we fit into what that target really wants. So if I decide I want to go make a restaurant, right, and it's going to focus on Americana and people that want to have all American kind of stuff, what do I need to do to position my restaurant for that? Well, I gotta have a Statue of Liberty there, right? And I gotta have some cowboy boots and a cowboy hat, and I've gotta have really American stuff. You have to have burgers there. There's gotta be burgers and fries, maybe throw in some meatloaf or something like that. You're gonna have this like super uber American stuff because that signifies that position, okay? We're looking at the attributes that are important for that position to fit into that thing. That's why when you go into a fancy restaurant, how do they position themselves? Well, you're gonna see that when they walk in, the professionalism at the hostess stand, right? Or the host stand, or the waiters, how they interact with you, the menu they have. I mean, what their menu looks like. I mean, think about it. If you walk into a restaurant and they give you a menu that's on a laminated piece of paper, you're not expecting to spend much. But if they give you one inside in a leather-bound book, you're like, oh, is this the Cheesecake Factory? This is so fancy with all these things. Oh my goodness. You think of that, it really is helping them to position themselves in the mind of consumers in a certain way. So really kind of think of those product attributes that are really going to fit in to that positioning, okay? So you might look at it in terms of, like for consumers, they might look at, value. How much do I get value out of this? We might look at those things, or the attributes that have to go into these products, or the symbols we're gonna use, like the cowboy hat and the American flag for Mark's Americana Diner. These kind of things we wanna think about. Other thing you might look at is the music you're gonna use, or the color scheme you're gonna have, what kind of gets people interested in your products. That's why when you look at it at university towns, you see a lot of the university colors in all the stores. Why? Because they're positioning themselves to be appealing to people from the university. And that's why when you're looking at your positioning, you want to make sure these attributes, these things you're doing, really call to the value that you're out there. You're really showing how that positioning is better than other competitors for your competition. That's why we make it over Americana looking. There's a Route 66 sign and everything's titled the Route 66 Experience instead of our tasting table. It's our Route 66 Experience. We have all kinds of things from Route 66, like corn dogs from Springfield, Illinois, and things like that. We do those things. And when you take all these 5 steps together, it really gives you that segmentation, targeting, positioning model. So you have a really good idea of how I'm breaking my customers down, what groups they go in, who I'm going to target, and how am I going to position myself for the most success? And that's what you're going for. So when you take these 5 steps together in the segmentation, targeting, positioning process, the STP process, when you take that together, it really makes it easier for you as a business to be successful because you're actually targeting people and selling to people with things they want and who wants it most versus randomly throwing a dart in the air thinking, sure, maybe somebody will buy that. So make sure you remember that process. 1, you have your strategy or objectives, right? You got to set that out. Then the second step, you have your segmentation methods, how we're going to divide up our firms. And then we have to analyze them, right? We have to analyze and evaluate each one of those segments, right? And then we have to determine which ones we're going to target. And then we figure out how we're going to position ourselves to look the most attractive for them so they go for us versus other YouTube channels that might not be as awesome for them as it is for these students like yourself. Anyway, I wish you all the best, and I'll say bye from here in New Orleans, Louisiana.